She scrubbed the floors of her own mansion while her cruel aunt and cousin lived in luxury. They had no idea the servant girl they tortured was actually the rightful owner of everything they had. And when the truth came out, their world came crashing down. Welcome to the nest, friends. I'm so glad you're here. Today's story is one you won't forget. So settle in and let's begin. Layla Knight was 20 years old, but she felt ancient. 5 years had passed since the night her parents' private plane went down over the Atlantic. 5 years since Aunt Nicole had become her guardian. 5 years since her life had turned into a living nightmare. The mansion that once echoed with her mother's laughter now held only the sound of Nicole's sharp voice and Catherine's cruel giggling. Layla, the floors aren't going to clean themselves. Nicole's heels clicked against the marble as she walked past, deliberately stepping on the section Layla had just finished. And when you're done here, Catherine's bathroom needs scrubbing. She's had another one of her parties. Layla kept her head down, her hands raw and red from the harsh chemicals. She'd learned not to respond, not to make eye contact. Resistance only made things worse. At 15, she tried to fight back. She still had the scar on her shoulder from where Nicole had shoved her down the attic stairs. Did you hear me, you useless girl? Nicole's voice grew sharper. Yes, Aunt Nicole, Layla whispered. That's what I thought. Nicole's smile was cold. Remember, you're lucky we even let you stay here. Without us, you'd be on the streets. The words were a familiar poison. Nicole had been feeding Layla this lie for years, and somewhere in the exhausted corners of her mind, Layla had almost started to believe it. Almost. But late at night, locked in her attic room, she'd pull out the one photo she'd managed to hide, her parents on their wedding day, her mother's eyes full of warmth and love. That photo reminded her of the truth. This mansion, this fortune, this life was supposed to be hers. Catherine appeared at the top of the grand staircase, her designer dress probably costing more than most people earned in a year. At 25, she'd grown into a perfect copy of her mother. Beautiful on the outside, rotten within. Mother? Is that pathetic creature still here? I thought we were getting rid of her soon. Catherine's voice carried down the stairs, intentionally loud enough for Layla to hear. Nicole's laugh was sharp. Patience, darling. Just 3 more months until her 21st birthday, then we'll have to take care of our little problem permanently. Layla's hands froze on the brush. 21st birthday. Inheritance. The words her father's lawyer, Mr. Paul, had whispered to her years ago suddenly roared back to life in her memory. When you turn 21, Layla, everything transfers to you. Your parents made sure of it. But Mr. Paul had died 6 months ago. A car accident, they'd said. Layla knew better. She knew everything Nicole touched turned deadly. The doorbell rang, its chime cutting through the tension like a knife. Nicole's expression shifted instantly, her cruel mask replaced by one of gracious hospitality. That must be the Ashwoods. Catherine, darling, fix your hair. We need this merger. Layla scrambled to gather her cleaning supplies, desperate to disappear before the guests arrived. But she wasn't fast enough. The door swung open, and Evan Ashwood stepped into the foyer with his business partner trailing behind. Evan was 27 years old, tall and commanding in an expensive suit that somehow looked uncomfortable on him, as if he'd rather be anywhere else. His dark eyes swept the room with the practiced assessment of a man who'd built an empire from nothing. Mrs. Knight, thank you for having us, Evan said, his voice polite but distant. Mr. Ashwood, the pleasure is ours, and please call me Nicole. She gestured toward Catherine, who'd arranged herself at the perfect angle to catch the light. You remember my daughter, Catherine? Of course. Evan's tone was neutral, revealing nothing. Layla tried to slip past them toward the servants' hallway, her bucket clutched in aching hands. But as she moved, the bucket caught on the corner of an antique table. Water sloshed over the rim, splashing across the marble floor. You clumsy fool! Nicole's mask cracked instantly. Her hand shot out, gripping Layla's arm with bruising force. Look what you've done. Get out of my sight before I... Is she all right? Evan's voice cut through Nicole's rage. The room went silent. Layla felt Evan's gaze on her for the first time, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Not pity. She'd learned to hate pity, but something else. Recognition, perhaps, or concern. She's fine, Nicole said quickly, releasing Layla's arm and forcing her smile back into place. Just a clumsy servant. You know how it is with help these days. But Evan's eyes hadn't left Layla's face. He saw the bruises on her wrists, poorly hidden by threadbare sleeves. He saw the fear in her eyes, the way she flinched when Nicole moved. And in that moment, something shifted in Evan Ashwood's carefully ordered world. Actually, he said slowly, I'd like some water. Perhaps she could bring it to the sitting room. Nicole's smile tightened. Of course, Layla, you heard Mr. Ashwood. Layla fled to the kitchen, her heart hammering. Why had he done that? Why had he noticed her at all? In 5 years, dozens of people had walked through this mansion, business associates, society friends, party guests, and not one of them had truly seen her. They'd looked past her, through her as if she were part of the furniture. But Evan Ashwood had seen her, and somehow that terrified her more than Nicole's cruelty. She filled a crystal glass with trembling hands, trying to steady her breathing. When she returned to the sitting room, Evan was seated on the sofa, nodding politely as Catherine chattered about her latest shopping trip to Paris, but his eyes tracked Layla's entrance immediately. Your water, sir. Layla kept her voice barely above a whisper, setting the glass on the table. Thank you. His voice was gentle. What's your name? The question hit her like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had asked her name? That's not necessary, Mr. Ashwood, Nicole interjected smoothly. I'd like to know her name. Evan said, his tone still polite, but now edged with steel. Layla's throat closed. She couldn't remember the last time she'd said her own name out loud. Layla, she finally whispered. My name is Layla. Evan's eyes held hers for a moment longer, and she saw something flicker in them. Determination, maybe, or the beginning of a plan. Then Nicole was ushering Layla out of the room, her nails digging into Layla's shoulder as she propelled her toward the kitchen. You don't speak unless spoken to, and you certainly don't draw attention to yourself in front of important guests, Nicole hissed once they were alone. One more mistake like that and you'll spend the next week locked in the attic with no food. Do you understand? Yes, Aunt Nicole. But something had changed. Evan Ashwood knew her name. It was such a small thing, but it felt like the first ray of sunlight after years of darkness. 3 days later, Anna Chen appeared at the mansion's service entrance. She was 27, dressed in the simple uniform of domestic help, her expression professionally neutral. Nicole hired her on the spot. The previous housekeeper had quit suddenly, and Anna's references were impeccable. What Nicole didn't know was that Evan Ashwood had created those references. Anna was his oldest friend, a lawyer who'd helped him navigate the treacherous waters of corporate warfare, and she'd agreed without hesitation to go undercover when Evan had told her about the frightened girl with bruises on her wrists. You're Layla, right? Anna whispered that first evening when they were alone in the linen closet. Evan sent me. Layla's hands shook as she folded towels. I don't understand. Why would he? Because he saw you, really saw you, and he can't stop thinking about what might be happening in this house. Anna pulled something from her pocket, a smartphone, small and sleek. He wanted you to have this. It's programmed with only his number, completely secure. You can talk to him whenever you need to. Layla stared at the phone like it was a dangerous animal. If she finds this, she'll kill me. She might kill you too. Then we'll hide it well. Anna's smile was warm, the first genuine kindness Layla had experienced in years. There's a loose floorboard in your attic room, third one from the window. I checked this afternoon. Hide it there. Charge it when you can. Evan wants to help you, Layla, but he needs to understand what's really happening here. That night, alone in her attic prison, Layla pulled out the phone with trembling hands. The screen glowed in the darkness, and there was already a message waiting. Layla, this is Evan. You don't have to respond if you're not ready, but I want you to know you're not alone anymore. I'm going to help you. I promise. Tears blurred her vision as she typed back with clumsy fingers. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me. His response came quickly. Because you looked at me like you'd forgotten people could be kind. Because you have bruises you're trying to hide. Because something is very wrong in that house and I can't walk away from that. Tell me the truth, Layla. Who are you really? And so, in the darkness of her attic room, Layla began to type. She told him everything. The plane crash that killed her parents when she was 15, the way Nicole had slowly isolated her from the outside world, the story of her being in a Swiss recovery facility that Nicole told everyone. She told him about the inheritance she was supposed to receive on her 21st birthday, about Mr. Paul, the lawyer who'd promised to protect her rights, about his convenient death 6 months ago. "I'm not a servant," she typed, her hands shaking. "I'm Layla Knight. This is my house, my fortune. Nicole stole everything from me, and in 3 months, when I turn 21, she's planning to make sure I never claim what's mine." Evan's response took longer this time. "Layla, I need you to trust me. I'm going to investigate this. If what you're saying is true, and I believe you, then Nicole has committed fraud, possibly murder. But I need evidence. Can you tell me everything you remember about your parents' lawyer? About the company? About anything that might help?" Over the following weeks, Layla and Evan fell into a rhythm. Late-night messages that stretched into hours. She told him about her childhood, about her parents' love and laughter, about the girl she used to be before grief and cruelty had tried to break her. He told her about building his company from nothing, about the loneliness of success, about how meeting her had reminded him why he'd wanted to make a difference in the first place. "I can't stop thinking about you," Evan messaged one night. "Is that wrong, given everything you're going through?" Layla stared at the words, her heart doing something it hadn't done in 5 years. It felt hope. "It's the only thing keeping me alive," she typed back. "Knowing you're out there, knowing someone sees me." Meanwhile, Evan's private investigator was digging deep. They found Mr. Paul's hidden office, the one his widow didn't know about. Inside were recordings, the lawyer's voice detailing his suspicions about Nicole Knight's financial activities, his plans to meet with Layla before her 21st birthday, his fear that he was being followed. "This is evidence of murder," Evan's investigator said grimly. "Nicole Knight killed this man to keep him silent." Evan's jaw tightened. "Keep digging. I want everything. Bank records, forged documents, testimony from anyone who worked in that house. We're going to bury her." But they were running out of time. Layla's 21st birthday was 2 months away. "I want to see you," Evan messaged. "Really see you. Not in that house where she controls everything, just you and me. That's impossible. She watches me constantly. The only time I'm alone is at night, locked in my room." "Then we'll make it possible. Trust me, Layla. Trust Anna. We're going to get you out of there, even if it's just for one night." The escape took 3 weeks to plan. Anna would create a distraction. A small electrical fire in the kitchen, nothing dangerous, but enough to panic Nicole and Catherine. In the chaos, Layla would slip out through the servants' entrance, where Evan would be waiting. The night arrived with Layla's nerves stretched to breaking point. She'd never been outside the mansion grounds in 5 years. The thought of open air, of freedom, even temporary freedom, made her dizzy with fear and anticipation. The fire alarm shrieked through the mansion at midnight. Nicole's screams echoed from downstairs as Anna apologized profusely, explaining about the faulty wiring. Layla crept down the back stairs, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. Evan was waiting by the garden gate, and the moment she saw him, really saw him in person, not through stolen glances in the sitting room, something inside her shifted and settled. He looked at her like she was precious, like she mattered. Layla. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. They drove to the lake outside the city, where the lights didn't reach and the stars spread across the sky like diamonds. Layla had forgotten how beautiful the world could be. "Tell me something," Evan said softly as they sat on the hood of his car. "When this is over, when you're free and you have your life back, what's the first thing you want to do?" Layla thought about it, really thought. "I want to go back to school. I want to finish my education. I want to learn how to run my father's company the right way, not Nicole's way. And I want..." She paused, her courage faltering. "What do you want, Layla?" "I want to know what it feels like to be loved without fear." Evan's hand found hers in the darkness. "You already know. You just haven't recognized it yet." When he kissed her, gentle and sure, Layla felt something break open inside her. Not breaking apart, but breaking free. This was what it felt like to reclaim yourself. This was what it felt like to choose hope over despair. But they'd been gone too long. By the time a van dropped her back at the garden gate, dawn was threatening the horizon. Layla slipped through the servant's entrance, her lips still tingling from Evan's kiss, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She made it halfway up the back stairs before the lights blazed on. Catherine stood at the top of the staircase, her phone in her hand, a vicious smile spreading across her face. Well, where have you been, little Layla? Layla's blood turned to ice. I was just... Save it. Catherine's voice was poisonous with triumph. I saw you. I followed you to that garden gate, watched you get into his car. Evan Ashwood. Oh, Mother is going to love this. Nicole appeared behind Catherine, her face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little wretch. After everything I've done for you, you sneak around with my business associates? You try to ruin Catherine's chances? It's not like that. Layla started, but Nicole's hand cracked across her face with enough force to split her lip. You've become a problem, Layla, and I eliminate problems. Nicole's voice dropped to something cold and deadly. Catherine, call Tim. Tell him we need the warehouse prepared. Tonight. Layla's terror spiked. Tim was Nicole's driver, a brutal man who asked no questions and left no witnesses. Aunt Nicole, please. You should have died with your parents, Nicole hissed. I've been too patient, waiting for your birthday, but you forced my hand. Tonight, you disappear. Permanently. They dragged Layla to the basement, that bound her wrists with zip ties that cut into her skin, and threw her into Tim's van. Layla's phone, her lifeline to Evan, was still hidden in the attic. She had no way to call for help, no way to tell anyone where they were taking her. The old Knight warehouse sat on the abandoned industrial edge of town, a property Nicole controlled that no one would think to search. They threw Layla onto the concrete floor, and she felt something crack in her ribs. Pain exploded through her chest. Make it look like an accident, Nicole instructed Tim coldly. A runaway with mental problems. Tragic overdose. No one will question it. Catherine stood in the doorway, her earlier triumph fading into something that might have been doubt. Mother, maybe we should just... Shut up, Catherine. This is necessary. In 3 months, she would have taken everything from us. I won't allow it. They left her there in the darkness, locked in and alone with her terror. Layla's ribs screamed with every breath. Blood from her split lip dripped onto the floor. She tried to stay conscious, tried to think, but pain and fear were drowning her. At the mansion, Anna discovered Layla's empty room at dawn. The hidden phone was still there, but Layla was gone. Anna's hands shook as she called Evan. She's missing. Nicole knows something. The whole house is in chaos and they're pretending everything is normal, but Layla is gone. Evan, they've taken her somewhere. Evan's world tilted. I'm coming. Check Nicole's office, her files, anything that might tell us where she'd take Layla. And Anna, call the police. Tell them everything. The next hours were a nightmare of dead ends and growing desperation. Evan tore through every lead, every property associated with Nicole Knight. His investigator pulled up maps, old deeds, business records. The police were moving too slowly, bound by procedure and warrants. The warehouse, Evan's investigator said suddenly. Knight Industrial Storage. It's been abandoned for 3 years, but it's still in Nicole's name. If she wanted somewhere isolated... Evan was already moving. He didn't wait for police backup, didn't waste time with caution. If Layla was dying somewhere while he followed protocol, he'd never forgive himself. He crashed through the warehouse doors just as Tim was preparing the scene. A bottle of pills, Layla's limp form on the floor, the careful staging of a suicide. Evan's fist connected with Tim's jaw before the man could react, and then he was on his knees beside Layla. Layla, stay with me, please. Her pulse was weak but present. Blood stained her clothes, her breathing was shallow, but she was alive. Evan, her voice was barely a whisper. You found me. Always. I'll always find you. He gathered her carefully into his arms, feeling her broken ribs, seeing the bruises already forming. Hold on, Layla, just hold on. The ambulance arrived with police cars right behind it. Nicole and Catherine were arrested at the mansion within the hour, their faces twisted with disbelief as their perfect scheme crumbled. Tim was taken into custody at the warehouse, the evidence of attempted murder overwhelming. If you're still watching this story, hit that like button and subscribe because what happens next will restore your faith in justice. Layla spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Broken ribs, severe dehydration, psychological trauma that would take months of therapy to address. But she was alive. Evan barely left her side, and Anna brought her flowers every day. Real flowers, not the artificial ones Nicole had kept in the mansion because they required less effort. "What happens now?" Layla asked one evening, her voice stronger, the fear finally beginning to fade from her eyes. "Now you heal," Evan said, his hand wrapped around hers. "Now we make sure Nicole and Catherine pay for everything they've done. And now you start taking back your life." The evidence was overwhelming. Mr. Paul's recordings, the forged documents Nicole had used to steal from the company, testimony from terrified household staff who finally felt safe to speak, financial forensics showing years of embezzlement. Nicole Knight and Catherine faced charges of fraud, embezzlement, attempted murder, and in Nicole's case, conspiracy to commit murder for Mr. Paul's death. A few weeks after the rescue, Layla turned 21. Evan had arranged something special, a formal dinner at the most exclusive restaurant in the city, every major business figure and socialite in attendance. Nicole and Catherine's trial was set to begin the following week, but Evan wanted Layla to reclaim her identity first, publicly, powerfully. Layla walked into that restaurant in a dress that cost more than Nicole had allowed her to eat in a year. Her hair was styled, her bruises healed, her spine straight. Evan stood beside her, and Anna was there too. The room fell silent as Evan stood to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to someone. 5 years ago, the world was told that Layla Knight was recovering in a private facility after the tragic death of her parents. That was a lie. The truth is that Layla has been held prisoner in her own home, tortured and abused by the very people who were supposed to protect her. Tonight, on her 21st birthday, Layla Knight reclaims her name, her fortune, and her future." The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Society matrons who'd once attended Nicole's parties gasped in shock, and Layla felt something she'd never expected to feel again, free. Share this story if you believe justice should always win. Comment below what you would have done in Layla's situation. The trial was swift and brutal. Nicole's lawyers tried every trick, but the evidence was insurmountable. Nicole Knight was sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Catherine received 15 years as an accessory. Tim got 30. The judge's words were scathing. "You took a child's grief and twisted it into your own profit. You tortured someone you were supposed to protect. This court finds your actions unconscionable." 2 years passed. Layla spent them reclaiming everything Nicole had stolen: her education, her company, her sense of self. She underwent therapy, learned to run Knight Industries with integrity and compassion, and slowly, carefully let herself believe in happiness. Evan was patient. He courted her properly this time, with flowers and dates and long conversations that had nothing to do with rescue or trauma. He let her heal at her own pace, let her find her own strength. When he proposed, it was at the lake where they'd first kissed, under the same stars that had witnessed her first taste of freedom. "I loved you when you were broken," Evan said, slipping the ring onto her finger. "But watching you heal, watching you become who you were always meant to be, that's been the greatest privilege of my life." "I loved you when I had nothing," Layla replied, tears streaming down her face. "You gave me everything by seeing me when I was invisible." The wedding was a celebration of survival and love. Layla, radiant in white, finally free from her past, it felt like the universe itself was celebrating their victory. Layla Knight had scrubbed the floors of her own mansion while cruel people lived in luxury. They'd thought the servant girl was powerless, but they'd underestimated her strength, her resilience, and the man who'd refused to look away. When the truth came out, their world crashed down, and from those ashes, Layla built something beautiful. From victim to survivor to victor. That's the power of refusing to give up, even in the darkest moments. Hit that subscribe button for more stories of triumph over adversity. And remember, you're stronger than you know.